Sandwalker recruits laughed as the alien girl collapsed, then froze when human carried her away. She hadn't eaten in days. No one noticed, except the ones who laughed. In the elite Sandwalker Corps, strength was measured by silence, and the alien girl with golden eyes had learned to suffer quietly. But on the third day of mocking, under the blistering twin suns of Arkhos 9, her body gave out. She collapsed mid-drill, unmoving, forgotten in the sand. And that's when everything changed. A boy no one saw, Elias Thorn, stepped forward, alone, uninvited, and unwelcome. He crossed the field, lifted her broken body in his arms, and walked through the silence. You won't believe how that single step shattered a culture built on cruelty. If you love stories of redemption, sacrifice, and unexpected courage, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. These stories deserve to be remembered, because this wasn't just about two cadets. It was about the moment silence turned into resistance, and how a simple tray of food became a symbol that would echo across the galaxy. This is the story of the girl who wouldn't ask for help, and the boy who refused to let her fall unseen. Arkhos 9 burned with artificial suns that never set. Sandwalker Base had no night, only endless training under sterile light and desert winds that scraped like knives. Among the recruits in their carbon-armored uniforms stood one figure who didn't quite belong. Liora'Nai moved like a shadow, her pale blue skin tight over hollow cheeks. Her species, the Liora'Nai, weren't built for heat or confrontation. But here she was, silent, upright, and determined not to fall. As cadets shouted and charged across the dunes, she took smaller steps, conserving energy, eyes fixed on the horizon. Every day she reported for duty, though the rations meant for her biology hadn't arrived in 3 cycles. No one cared. No one offered. Her hunger was invisible in a place that only rewarded resilience shouted aloud. She sat apart during meals, her posture perfect, hands folded, pretending to chew. Around her, metal trays clattered, laughter echoed, and the smell of salt protein filled the air. The humans didn't whisper anymore. They laughed out loud now. Royalty doesn't need food, I guess, someone muttered. Maybe they photosynthesize. Another joked. Liora kept her gaze steady, staring through her bowl as if it were a simulation. Her stomach had long since stopped growling. It surrendered to the cold gnaw of emptiness. But still, she would not ask. Not here, not in front of them. Her pride was all that remained intact. If she begged, she'd be proving them right. She couldn't let that happen. Across the mess hall, one cadet didn't laugh. Elias Thorn watched from behind his tray, quiet as always. He hadn't spoken to her, not once. Not out of cruelty, but out of hesitation. He knew what it meant to be invisible. He also knew that stepping in meant becoming a target. Sandwalker culture was merciless. If you showed weakness or broke ranks, you became the joke. Still, something twisted in his gut as he saw her fingers tremble under the table, her posture faltering for just a second. No one else noticed. He looked away, angry at himself. He'd promised never be like the others, but also never to stand out again. Once, in his childhood colony, he'd stolen food for his sister. He knew hunger. He hated remembering it. The next day, during the obstacle drills, Liora moved like a whisper between towers of metal and fire. The others panted, cursed, yelled. She said nothing. She completed the circuit without falling once, her movements graceful in their economy. For a moment, the other cadets watched in silence. Someone even nodded in respect. But then Corporal Van shouted, "Careful, if you get too close, she might suck your soul out." Laughter returned with vengeance. Liora didn't react. She bowed her head slightly and returned to formation. Inside, her vision blurred. The stars above seemed to bend sideways, and her knees began to betray her. She clenched her fists, anchoring herself to the ground through sheer force of will. The drills weren't over. She couldn't fall yet. That night, in the dorm, Liora stayed standing near her bunk. She drank only water and claimed Liora'Nai meditation required an empty stomach. Elias heard it from across the room and frowned. He knew that line. It was the same thing he told his little sister when he couldn't bring food home. We're training our bodies. His fingers dug into the edge of his cot. He wanted to say something. But what? That he saw her? That she didn't need to pretend? He wasn't ready. Not yet. Maybe she'd make it. Maybe someone else would step up. Maybe. But deep down, he knew none of that would happen. No one was coming for her. The following morning, the desert simulation intensified. Sandstorm turbines roared across the training field, reducing visibility and baking the terrain. Cadets struggled through the course, coughing and squinting. Liora stumbled but kept moving. Her limbs shook now, her breath erratic, but she never stopped. The instructors watched silently. None offered water. None paused the drill. As she neared the final checkpoint, the world tilted. Her foot missed a mark, her leg gave out, and she dropped to one knee. Laughter rose like vultures. Guess that royal discipline has limits, someone called out. Still, she rose again. Her dignity was not something she'd surrender willingly. But her body didn't care about pride. The sun, the lack of nutrients, the exhaustion, they all converged at once. Her head spun violently. She saw figures, blurry and distant, distorted by the heat. Her legs turned to air. With no one near her, no hand extended. She collapsed fully, face down in the dust, arms twitching. The cadets hesitated for a second, then erupted in more laughter. A few feigned concern, others mocked her fall. Elias didn't laugh. He stood frozen, torn between fear and something else, rage. At them, at himself, at the system. He looked at her crumpled body and felt something crack. He clenched his jaw. This wasn't training anymore. This was cruelty. Elias looked around. The instructors said nothing. The cadets looked pleased. And Liora wasn't moving. For a split second, he imagined his sister in her place. He saw her hollow cheeks, her broken shoes, the day she fainted outside a relief truck. And suddenly, the decision wasn't decision at all. It was instinct. He threw his tray to the ground and began walking one slow step at a time toward the dust where she lay. The wind roared louder, as if warning him. The cadets fell silent, one by one, watching this invisible boy step forward while they did nothing. His boots crushed footprints in the sand. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He simply walked, with eyes locked on Leora's unconscious form. Something had shifted in him, and the others could feel it. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about what you did when no one else would. And Elias Thorn, the boy no one noticed, was about to change everything. The medbay report simply read, heat exhaustion, minor collapse. Liora was released after 1 hour, her vitals stable, no further action required. No one asked why the rations designated for her species hadn't arrived again. Supply delay, someone shrugged. She'll adapt, another said. She returned to the training field that same afternoon, lips pale, shoulders rigid. The whispers followed her like dust trails. Drama queen. Aliens can't handle pressure. But she held her head high, walked the perimeter alone, and didn't speak. If her body failed again, so be it, but her silence would remain unbroken. She knew now that asking for help meant falling lower, not rising. The Sandwalker culture didn't reward honesty. It devoured it. The cadets were louder now. In the mess hall, they tossed fake scraps near her tray. One rolled a ration bar across the floor and laughed when it stopped near her boot. She didn't move. Eat up, Liora, someone shouted. You earned it. She stared straight ahead. Inside, her mind began to fracture. This wasn't battle. It was mockery refined by repetition. Her instincts screamed to retreat, but her spine stayed upright. She would not leave, not until she earned the badge, not until she made them regret underestimating her. She would bleed first, break first, but never beg. That was her war now. Elias sat 3 tables away, pretending to read a digital report. He watched as the bar bounced and hit her foot. He saw the way her fingers dug into the edge of the table, white-knuckled, holding herself together. He hated them. Hated the way they joked as if they were above consequences. He hated himself more. He remembered the times he did nothing as a child when his friends mocked the refugees from Earth 5. And now, here he was again, frozen. You'll be next. a voice inside warned. If you speak, they'll turn on you. The fear was real. The rules were unwritten but brutal. His silence was survival, but it tasted like rust in his throat. That night, the sky dome flickered with a simulated thunderstorm, one of Arkhos' 9 psychological training protocols. It mimicked chaos, confusion, noise. The cadets enjoyed it, using the excuse to shout louder, play pranks, and flex bravado. But Liora sat in stillness by her bunk, eyes closed. Her body trembled in the flashes of synthetic lightning. No one saw. No one cared. Elias passed by, paused, and looked at her for a moment. She didn't move. He opened his mouth, closed it, walked away. Behind him, a cadet threw a foam cup at the wall and laughed. "Watch out, Thorn's going soft," someone joked. His face burned. He kept walking. Silence again. Instructors arrived the next morning with new orders. Full tactical course simulation in desert gear. Hydration was mandatory, but Liora'Nai's canister malfunctioned. She didn't report it. She didn't want more attention. As the sun simulation reached peak, she lagged behind, visibly slower. Cadets snickered as she struggled to climb the canyon wall. Someone mimicked her movements behind her back. One cadet, Private Jaxa, intentionally stumbled near her, spilling a pouch of water across the sand. "Oops," he said loudly. Everyone laughed. Even the instructor smirked. Elias clenched his jaw so tight it hurt. His fist curled. But he didn't move. Not yet. Not now. Later. During cool-down drills, Liora'Nai's body refused to cooperate. Her muscles locked. Her knees wobbled. She didn't fall, but she trembled like glass about to shatter. The others mimicked her posture, laughed, pretended to collapse in parody. Elias stood with them, silent, his breath shallow. One cadet nudged him. "You're quiet, Thorn. You got a crush on the alien." More laughter. Elias forced a chuckle. His stomach turned. It wasn't fear anymore. It was shame. A burning, quiet shame that crawled up his spine and into his chest. He was no better than them if he stood there doing nothing. But doing something meant changing everything. That evening, Liora stood alone in the field as the artificial suns dimmed. She looked up at the sky dome, her hands clasped behind her back. The silence felt colder than the sand beneath her boots. Elias watched her from the barracks window. Her shadow stretched far, longer than she looked. Something about that image, her standing there in stillness, empty yet unbroken, clawed at his memory. It wasn't just hunger. It was isolation so total it swallowed your voice. He'd been there, not as visibly, not as cruelly, but he'd lived it. And still, he hesitated. Still, he watched. Still, he waited. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. The laughter echoed in his mind. Her face, the way she trembled, her silence, it all haunted him. He replayed every scene, every second he failed to act. And with each replay, the guilt grew heavier. The barracks were quiet. Cadets snored. Lights pulsed faintly on the walls. He sat up, staring at the floor. "Enough," he whispered. It was just one gesture, one step, one line to cross. But once he crossed it, he could never go back, could never pretend again, could never be one of them. And so, the next morning, as the sun returned and the drills resumed, Elias didn't just observe. He followed her with his eyes, every movement, every step. The Hunger Games weren't over. They were escalating. He knew something would break soon. The question was, who would break first? The girl who wouldn't eat, or the boy who couldn't stay silent? The heat simulation reached record intensity that day. The twin suns over Arkhos 9's drill field glared without mercy, baking every inch of terrain. The recruits were ordered into full armor, tasked with 7-click endurance circuit while carrying heavy pulse packs. Liora tightened the straps of her gear without a word. Her fingers trembled, her chest felt hollow, but she forced her limbs to obey. She would not ask for exemption. If this place wanted to break her, it would have to do it without her consent. Around her, cadets muttered bets on when she'd drop. "Third checkpoint," one said. "She won't even reach the dunes." Another laughed. She heard every word and kept walking. By the second checkpoint, Sweat soaked her collar, but she didn't slow. Her breath rasped and short, shallow bursts, and her vision blurred around the edges. She blinked away, biting the inside of her cheek to stay alert. Her people had endurance. They were born in gravity-rich worlds, but they weren't made for solar extremes or artificial deserts. Still, she advanced. She passed 2 cadets who had slowed down, refusing to look at their faces. When a staff drone hovered close and scanned her vitals, it hesitated, beeped once, then flew off without reporting. No one intervened. No one cared. Her body screamed. Her mind whispered war songs. At the ridge before the dunes, her legs buckled slightly. Her knees jolted forward, but she caught herself. From the top of the hill, Elias watched. He wasn't far. His unit was close behind hers. He saw the twitch in her stride, the tilt of her shoulders. He recognized that movement, the slow collapse beneath skin and steel. It mirrored the memory of his sister walking too far for water, of his mother collapsing in a line for rations. He clenched his hands, willing himself to stay alert. This time, he wouldn't look away. He couldn't, but still, he waited. What would she do? Liora reached the 4th checkpoint, barely. Her lips cracked. Her steps were staggered now. Her brain registered sound as distant echoes. She passed the officers. None of them blinked. Her breath rasped against her mask. She couldn't feel her fingertips anymore. Her muscles trembled without rhythm. And then, just before the 5th checkpoint, her left leg simply stopped responding. Her body tilted sideways. The weight of the pulse back crushed her backward. Her spine hit the sand. A sharp cry escaped her lips before the world tilted and went white. For a moment, there was only stillness. The drills continued. The recruits kept running. A few glanced her way. Most looked past her. Then someone snorted, "That's what you get for trying to be a sandwalker with bird bones." Laughter followed. Another cadet jogged by and said, "Someone get her a protein bar or a babysitter." No one offered aid. No instructor moved. The silence of authority echoed louder than the jokes. Her body convulsed once, then stilled. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, and she mumbled a word in Liora'Nai tongue no one understood. Then her eyes rolled back. Elias moved, slowly, deliberately. His legs walked before his mind caught up. His instincts had taken over. He dropped his pulse back in the sand. He didn't shout, didn't ask. He just walked, past his team, past the laughing cadets, past the frozen instructors. Each step made the laughter die, one voice at a time. The air felt denser, the sun hotter, but he didn't stop. He walked to where Liora lay, curled like a broken stem in the dunes. He knelt beside her. She was unconscious, her pulse faint. Dust clung to her face. Her uniform was soaked in sweat, and her fingers twitched in a slow, desperate rhythm. Elias reached under her shoulders and knees and lifted her. She weighed less than he expected. Too light. Her body felt like memory and bone. As he stood with her in his arms, a breeze rolled through the training field, and with it came silence. Complete, unnatural silence. Not a single cadet laughed now. Elias turned, his boots pressed into the sand, forming a path no one had dared walk before. He carried her past the instructors, past the open-mouthed recruits, and toward the base. No one stopped him. No one spoke. Some lowered their heads. Others stared in disbelief. This wasn't rebellion. It wasn't weakness. It was defiance wrapped in mercy. And for the first time since the program began, Elias Thorn was no longer invisible. He was a storm inside the silence. The air felt different when Elias stepped into the base with Liora in his arms. The re-entry gate opened with a hydraulic hiss, but no one behind him spoke. The instructors didn't call him back. No command was issued. It was as if the entire Sandwalker complex had paused to witness something outside protocol, something older than training manuals. He walked past the barracks, through the mess corridor, straight into the med bay, where the stunned assistant droid issued a delayed beep. Species ID, Liora'Nai. Status, critical. Initiating hydration therapy. Elias didn't wait for permission. He set her down gently on the table, stepped back, and stared. She didn't move. In that moment, everything inside him felt exposed. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't brave. He was furious. Furious that it had taken this long, that everyone, including himself, had waited until she collapsed. Furious that silence had passed for discipline. The med staff began connecting lines and adjusting monitors, but no one asked questions. No reprimands. No lectures. He stood there, fists clenched, watching the drip enter her arm. Her eyelids fluttered, but she remained unconscious. He whispered, "Hang on," before turning to leave. His boots echoed down the corridor like a slow drumbeat. As he stepped outside, the sun was dipping low on the horizon, bathing the drill field in burnt orange. The recruits had finished the course, but they hadn't left. They stood scattered across the dunes, unusually quiet. The laughter had vanished. A few looked down at their boots when Elias passed. Others watched him with unreadable expressions. Private Jaxa, who had mocked Liora'Nai's fall, avoided his gaze completely. Elias didn't stop. He walked straight to the mess hall, entered, and grabbed a tray. Inside, the clatter of dinner was muted. Some cadets glanced up, expecting him to eat. Instead, Elias filled the tray with double rations, bread, water, and one of the rare protein packs. The room stilled. He turned and walked out without a word, carrying the tray like a symbol. Outside, the wind picked up again, carrying whispers across the compound. Everyone was watching. No one knew what to say. Back in the med bay, Liora'Nai's eyes opened slowly. Blurred light, machines humming, and the scent of antiseptic. Her limbs felt heavy, her throat raw. She tried to move but couldn't. Then she heard footsteps and saw him. Elias walked in with the tray and set it beside her. He didn't speak immediately. He just sat, arms crossed, watching her breathe. She turned her face away, ashamed, but he leaned forward and said, "You're not alone." It wasn't pity. It was something else. Acknowledgement. She stared at the food in silence. Her pride tangled with hunger, shame with confusion. Why him? Why now? She reached for the cup of water first, hands trembling, then the bread, the protein bar last. He never looked away. When she was done, she sat back against the bed, exhaling as if shedding years of fear. "Why?" she asked, her voice like dry wind. Elias shrugged. "Because someone should have, and no one did." Their eyes locked. Two recruits from different worlds, both marked by hunger, his from poverty, hers from isolation. That moment didn't erase what had happened. It didn't end the cruelty or fix the system, but it cracked something, a fracture that let light in. Elias stood to leave, but paused. "Tomorrow," he said, "you sit at my table." Liora'Nai's lips parted in disbelief. Not an offer, a statement. She nodded once, and he walked out. News spread before the sun rose. The ghost carried her. He fed her himself. Did you see the way everyone froze? Rumors bloomed like wildfire across the barracks. Some mocked, others whispered with awe. A new word emerged among the recruits, the tray. It became code, meaning honor without rank. Elias didn't address it. He didn't seek attention. But the silence around him had changed. Not empty anymore, charged. Morning drills began like any other, but the silence remained. The instructors barked commands, but their words felt thinner, less certain. The recruits lined up, eyes forward, yet something had shifted. No one dared to look at Liora'Nai directly. She stood in formation again, recovered, upright and still silent. But this time, her presence carried gravity. The med team had cleared her for light activity. The bruises had faded. The hunger had not. But she was not the same girl who collapsed in the sand. And neither was Elias. He stood beside her now, not as protector, but as a mirror. At meal call, the mess hall filled with boots and breath and shuffling trays. Liora'Nai entered with Elias, both walking side by side. Conversations dipped, then halted. The room braced for mockery, but none came. Elias took his usual seat at the edge of the second row and pulled out the chair beside him. Liora'Nai hesitated. Her skin flushed violet around her neck ridges. Sitting meant accepting. Accepting meant trusting. Still, she stepped forward. The clatter of her tray echoed louder than it should have. She sat, Across the hall, mouths hung open. Forks froze in midair. For a moment, no one moved. Then someone whispered. He meant it. A recruit at another table dropped his spoon. Jaxa stared openly. Van blinked. No one laughed. No one dared. Elias began to eat as if it were the most normal thing in the galaxy. Liora followed his lead. Bread first. Protein slab next. Her movements were precise, almost ceremonial. Every bite was a rebellion. Every swallow a warning. Around them, the room grew warmer, not from heat, but from something sharper. Discomfort, guilt, recognition. An instructor entered and froze at the sight. Captain Dargas, silent and imposing, stood at the doorway, arms crossed. His eyes swept over the room, landed on Liora and Elias, and lingered. He didn't speak, didn't interrupt. After a moment, he turned and walked out. A signal, one not lost on anyone. From that moment on, the silence was official. No one would stop them, but neither would anyone openly join. For now, Liora finished her meal slowly. She had never tasted food so fully. It wasn't the flavor, it was the context. She had consumed hundreds of nutrient bars back on Liora'Nai Prime. But this meal wasn't about nourishment. It was about defiance, about dignity. She looked around at the faces watching her, some filled with disgust, others with doubt, one or two with something closer to curiosity. She met their stares and didn't flinch. She wiped her mouth and stood up. Elias rose with her. They left their trays. No words exchanged. As they exited the mess, whispers surged behind them. "That's the table now," someone murmured. "You sit there, you choose sides." The phrase caught quickly. In less than an hour, 2 recruits placed their trays beside theirs, then changed their minds. Fear still ruled, but the crack had opened. The idea had been seeded. Not rebellion, reminder that honor wasn't loyalty to cruelty, that strength could mean protection, not domination. Later that day, during tactical sims, Liora outscored half the class. Her agility had returned. She no longer moved like someone surviving. She moved like someone who had decided she deserved to. Elias, on the other hand, didn't speak all day. He didn't need to. His presence beside her spoke louder than any speech. When the final bell rang, he placed his hand briefly on her shoulder before parting ways. A gesture unnoticed by the instructors, but deeply felt by everyone watching. In the barracks that night, no one threw things. No one made alien jokes. The silence had evolved, from mocking to watching, from dominance to distance. But distance was better than hatred. It meant a shift had begun. In the darkness, Elias sat on his bunk and stared at the wall. He hadn't meant to start anything. He just couldn't stay quiet. But now something had started, and he didn't know how to stop it, or if he even should. Liora lay awake too. Her body ached, but her mind was clear. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. More silence? More shame? Maybe. But now she wasn't walking alone. That changed everything. The table wasn't just a seat anymore. It was a story, and stories spread, even in places built to bury them. The silence had settled into the bones of the base. It was no longer awkward or reactive. It had structure now. It had direction. By the time the third meal cycle came, no one dared laugh in the mess hall. Liora sat alone again, this time by choice. Elias arrived minutes later and joined her. They ate in silence, but it was not uncomfortable. It was intentional. Recruits passed by, trays in hand, pausing mid-step, unsure whether to join or to flee. Most fled. A few lingered too long, as if pulled by gravity they didn't understand yet. Captain Dargas summoned Elias that evening. His tone was neutral, neither warm nor harsh. Cadet Thorn, report. Elias entered the briefing room expecting punishment, or worse, a formal dismissal. Instead, he found the captain alone, his uniform perfectly pressed, hands behind his back. "Sit." Elias obeyed. For a moment, neither spoke. The screen behind Dargas showed data logs, vitals, thermal readings. Liora's collapse displayed like a tactical error. Then Dargas spoke, voice low. "You humiliated your unit." Elias didn't flinch. He expected that. What he didn't expect came next. But you reminded them what honor looks like. The silence of the room thickened. Elias blinked. Sir, Dargis continued, don't confuse protocol with justice. One keeps the machine running. The other keeps it from rusting. He turned off the screen. You've stirred something, Cadet. I don't know what comes next. But know this, Sandwalker tolerates strength, even when it takes unexpected forms. There was no praise, no congratulations, just acknowledgement. Elias stood, saluted, and left the room with a strange heaviness in his chest. Dargis watched him go, then muttered, Good. Let them remember. The next day, a small bowl of fresh fruit appeared on Liora'Nai's cot. No note, no name, just a quiet offering. She stared at it for a long time before touching it. Elias walked in, saw it, and raised an eyebrow. She didn't explain. He didn't ask. They both understood. Something had shifted. Later, two cadets moved their seats slightly closer during mess. Not beside them, but closer. Enough to signal the beginning of something. One cadet, caught between both tables, pretended to fix his boot just to stay nearby. That afternoon, Elias and Liora were paired for a simulation. Their teamwork was precise, unspoken, efficient. When they disabled the defense drones in record time, the instructor nodded silently. No applause, but no snide remarks either. Respect was forming, not loudly, not officially, but unmistakably. During cool down, Elias sat in the shade while Liora practiced silent breathing, her skin glistening with sweat, eyes closed. It's spreading, he said softly. She opened one eye. The silence. He shook his head. No, the tray. Word of the tray traveled beyond their unit. Other bases began whispering about it. Some with disdain, others with quiet admiration. On communication channels between cadets, coded messages appeared. Sat the tray today. 2 more joined. No laughter at Arkhos 9. For the first time, the story of a girl who collapsed wasn't one of failure, but one of survival and rebellion. The act of sitting down had become its own form of defiance. Simple, unshakable. That night, Liora and Elias spoke under the artificial stars. Do you regret it? She asked. Elias thought for a moment. I regret waiting so long. She nodded slowly. I thought I was invisible. He looked at her. You were. So was I. Until you fell. Until I stood. The words settled between them like ancient truth. They didn't need more. The bond was forged, not by shared culture or command, but by hunger, silence, and a single moment of courage. Elsewhere in the base, a new recruit was caught mocking another alien cadet. This time, someone intervened. A punch wasn't thrown. No orders were barked. Just a question, spoken cold and clear. You think you're better than the tray? The room went quiet. No one laughed. The offender backed down. The silence returned. But it had changed shape again. It was no longer passivity. It was warning. In the darkness, a legend was forming. Not of a battle, not of a war hero, but of a boy who carried a girl, of a tray that became a banner, of a silence that shouted louder than orders. Sandwalker Base hadn't changed officially, but something deeper had shifted, and it wouldn't stop growing. Elias sat by the outer dome that evening, legs crossed, eyes lifted to the artificial stars. The horizon shimmered faintly, simulating dusk. Liora joined him in silence, sitting beside him with her arms wrapped around her knees. The training field behind them was quiet now. No drills, no barking orders, just the low hum of the dome and the wind simulation sweeping the dunes. You were right, she said. Elias turned his head slightly. About what? She stared forward. I wasn't alone. I just forgot how to see it. For a while, neither spoke. Then Elias exhaled. Back on Callus 3, my colony didn't get supply drops for weeks. My sister got sick. I used to walk 3 hours just to ask for food. Most times, they slammed the gate. One day, she fainted in front of me. I carried her to a ration outpost, same way I carried you. Liora turned to him, eyes soft. Did she survive? He nodded. Barely. We don't talk much now. She joined the Marines. I joined Sandwalker, hoping I'd matter. Liora whispered, "You do?" She looked down at her hands. I was born in the cast of ambassadors. My role was arranged from birth, marriage, negotiation, lineage. But I didn't want it. I refused the bonding ceremony. My family cut ties. No one on Liora'Nai would feed a traitor. Her voice faltered. I joined Sandwalker to prove I could survive without them, that I had value. But I didn't expect the hunger to be the same. Elias looked at her. Hunger always finds new forms. Shame, silence, isolation. It feeds differently, but it starves the same. They sat under the fake sky, two exiles from different planets, bound by a shared emptiness. Liora asked, "Do you ever regret saving me?" Elias didn't answer immediately. He glanced at her tray, now part of their shared legend, and shook his head. "No, I regret not doing it sooner. Regret not asking how you were when you first skipped meals. We all saw it. We just pretended not to." She nodded. I pretended too. That I was fine. That I didn't need anyone. Pride kept me starving. Elias turned his gaze back to the sky. It wasn't pride. It was fear. Asking for help here feels like weakness. But the real weakness is pretending cruelty is normal. Leora's voice was low. "Do you think they'll change?" He thought for a long time. Some will. Most won't. But someone always remembers. And that's where change starts. Not with everyone. Just with one who won't forget. Liora smiled faintly. Then will be the first memory. That night, as lights dimmed across the compound, 2 more cadets sat near the tray during mess. Still not at it, but close. The air had changed. A subtle shift in posture, in silence, in the way eyes met across tables. Liora noticed it. Elias did too. "It's growing," she whispered. Elias nodded. "Stories always do." He paused. "This one's not about victory, though. It's about choice. Who we become when no one's looking." She replied, "And what we carry when everyone is." In their bunk room, recruits watched them enter, without words. Elias offered a nod to those who didn't look away. Liora walked tall now, not as an alien trying to pass, but as someone who had survived where others had mocked. Her silence was no longer interpreted as weakness. It had become its own language, one that others were beginning to understand. And with that, the girl who wouldn't eat had become the one others now followed in silence. Outside, under the stars, a cadet left an extra ration on someone else's tray. No announcement, no witness, just a gesture. It went unnoticed by most, but not by the intended recipient, who picked it up with shaking hands and eyes wide. The chain had started, and like all quiet revolutions, it would not stop where it began. Years passed, names changed, cadets graduated, commanders rotated, and bases shifted from Arkhos 9 to more distant outposts. But the story remained. It moved with the wind, coded in messages between soldiers, embedded in training simulations as a quiet anomaly. They called it the Day of the Tray. Some believed it was myth. Others knew better. At Base 14, on a dust planet near the Crest Divide, a recruit asked during mess, "What's that seat by the wall?" A senior cadet replied, "That's the place where silence became armor, where someone chose to carry, not conquer." Liora rose through the ranks steadily, not quickly, but without compromise. Her record spoke for itself. Efficient, composed, respected. But it wasn't her precision that cadets remembered. It was a symbol she carried, her personal crest, approved quietly by command. 2 mesh trays side by side over a silhouette of twin moons. No slogans. No explanation. Those who knew, knew. The crest appeared on patches, then on data pads. One instructor wore it on his sleeve during a lecture. When asked, he simply said, "Because someone once remembered what it meant to be human." Elias never climbed the ranks. He left Sandwalker after his 4th year, quietly and without ceremony. No medals, no court-martial, just a letter left on Leora's bunk. I didn't need a badge. I just needed to know I didn't stay silent again. She never saw him after that. But every time she saw a recruit offer half a meal or sit beside someone cast aside, she knew his legacy hadn't vanished. It had multiplied. The boy who carried her had carried something far heavier than weight, and he had passed it on. One year, during a diplomatic exchange, a young alien cadet paused before choosing a seat. Across the hall, an older soldier, veteran of Arkhos 9, nodded to the wall and said, "Sit there. That seat remembers you." The cadet didn't understand fully. Not yet, but they sat anyway, and the silence that followed was no longer one of exile, but of welcome. The kind that tells you, "We saw you. We didn't forget." Back on Arkhos 9, the old barracks were being decommissioned. An officer found the remains of a carved message under a bunk, worn but legible. "If no one stands, carry them." He traced it with his fingers and smiled. No one had claimed it officially. It wasn't in the system, but it was in the walls, the soil, the way silence lingered in certain corners of the base. Not as fear, but as memory. Liora returned to that base once, years later, wearing command stripes. She entered the mess hall, now redesigned, brighter, cleaner. But the table was still there. Not the same one, but placed in the exact position. 2 chairs. Untouched. A young cadet approached and said, "Ma'am, do you want a private seat?" She looked at the table, then at the cadet. "No," she said. "Let them sit." And she walked away, leaving the tray behind. Stories were whispered again, of a Liora'Nai girl who collapsed, and a human boy who walked through firelight and mockery to lift her, of silence that saved, of gestures that outlasted guns. The Sandwalker Corps didn't teach this story in manuals, but it survived in eyes, in trays moved quietly, and in the hands that lifted others without words. Somewhere in a distant sector, a recruit collapses, and someone, maybe a boy like Elias, walks through the noise and carries them, because someone once did. If this story moved you, subscribe now to join us on more emotional journeys from the far corners of the galaxy. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and like the video to support stories that honor empathy and courage. Want to support the channel and help keep these missions alive? Become a member today and carry these stories even further. More tales like this are on their way. Don't miss the next unforgettable revelation from the Sandwalker universe.